The air in Willow Creek was thick with the scent of pine and freshly cut hay. But today, it carried something heavy-rich. I stood outside Miller's General Store, my grocery bag clutched tight, as Karen Phelps screamed into her phone. "Yes, officer. He assaulted my son. You need to get here now." Her voice was a siren, shrill and commanding, drawing every eye in this sleepy Montana town. Her son, Tyler, a lanky 17-year-old with a smug grin, leaned against the store's wall, tossing a soda can between his hands like a trophy. My jaw clenched. Assault. The kid had tried to snatch my groceries, claiming his mom told him he could take what he deserved. I'd only grabbed his wrist to stop him. Now, Karen was spinning a tale that could ruin me. Willow Creek wasn't a place for drama. It was all rolling fields, weathered barns, and folks who knew your name before you spoke it. I'd moved here 3 years ago, trading city chaos for a quiet life as the police chief. Nobody knew my job, yet he kept it low-key, blending in with flannel and a pickup truck. But Karen, head of the local HOA, had a knack for stirring trouble. She'd been after me since I refused to paint my fence her approved shade of beige. This was her latest stunt, and it was personal. "Karen, calm down," I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. "Tyler grabbed my stuff. I didn't hurt him." "Liar." She spat, her face red as the apples in my bag. "You attacked my boy. Everyone saw it." The crowd murmured, a mix of farmers, shopkeepers, and kids on bikes. Some nodded at Karen's words. Others looked skeptical. Tyler smirked wider, egging her on. I could feel the town splitting, choosing sides in a fight I didn't start. The truth was, I'd been at the store to grab dinner supplies: chicken, potatoes, and a 6-pack of root beer. Tyler had sauntered up, bold as brass, and demanded I hand over my bag. "Mom says you owe us," he'd said, like it was a tax I hadn't paid. When I refused, he lunged, and I caught his arm. That was it. Now, Karen was on her phone, painting me as a monster. I could hear the distant wail of sirens. My sirens. My officers were coming, and Karen had no idea who she was dealing with. I took a deep breath, the kind you take before a storm. "Karen, you're making a mistake," I said, locking eyes with her. She faltered for a split second, then doubled down. "You're done here, Mark Reynolds," she hissed. "I'll make sure of it." The crowd grew thicker, phones out, recording. This wasn't just about groceries anymore. It was about power, pride, and a small town's fragile peace. I stood my ground, knowing the truth was my shield but wondering if it would be enough. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. Karen's eyes gleamed with triumph as she lowered her phone, certain she'd won. Tyler tossed his soda can to the ground, the aluminum clinking against the pavement like a taunt. I stood still, my grocery bag heavy in my hand, the weight of the moment heavier. I wasn't just Mark Reynolds, the guy who fixed his own porch and waved at neighbors. I was the police chief, and the truth was about to hit like a freight train. 2 patrol cars pulled up, dust swirling around their tires. Officers Jenkins and Morales stepped out, their faces tight with confusion. They knew Minute just as their boss, but as the guy who bought them coffee on late shifts. Jenkins, a wiry man with a farmer's tan, scanned the scene. "Chief," he said, his voice low, questioning. Karen's face twitched. "Chief," she echoed, her confidence cracking. The crowd hushed, sensing a shift. I didn't answer Jenkins directly. Instead, I turned to Karen, my voice calm but firm. "Karen, you called my department. You accused me of assault. Let's hear your story." Her mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. Tyler's smirk faded, his eyes darting to his mother. The crowd leaned in, hungry for the next move. Karen recovered quickly, pointing a manicured finger at me. This man attacked my son. Tyler was just asking for help with groceries. And he grabbed him, twisted his arm. Help, I said, raising an eyebrow. I pulled out my phone, where I'd started recording the moment Tyler lunged at me. The audio wasn't perfect, but it caught his words. Mom says you owe us. I played it, letting the tinny sound carry over the crowd. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Karen's face paled, but she wasn't done. That's fake, she shouted. You edited it. Really? I said, stepping closer. Then let's hear from Tyler. Tell us, kid, why'd you try to take my groceries? Tyler froze, his bravado gone. The crowd's eyes bored into him. He mumbled something about just joking, but the lie hung limp in the air. Jenkins stepped forward, his hand on his radio. Ma'am, we'll need a statement. From both of you. Karen's bravado crumbled further as the truth seeped out. I wasn't just a neighbor she could bully. I was the law in Willow Creek. The crowd's whispers turned to murmurs of disbelief. Old Mrs. Carter, who ran the bakery, shook her head. Karen's been lording over this town too long, she muttered, loud enough for others to hear. The truth wasn't just about me. Karen's HOA reign had been a quiet terror fines for unkempt lawns, threats over mailbox colors, and rumors she'd pressured families to sell their land cheap to her developer friends. Tyler's grab for my groceries wasn't random. It was her entitlement spilling over, using her son as a pawn. I saw it in her eyes now, fear. Not of me, but of exposure. Karen, I said, my voice softer but no less firm. This stops now. You don't get to twist the truth to control people. She glared, but the crowd was shifting, their loyalty wavering. The truth was out, and it was sharper than any weapon I could carry. The standoff outside Miller's General Store felt like a powder keg. Karen's face was a mask of defiance, but her eyes betrayed panic. The crowd, now swollen with curious townsfolk, buzzed with whispers. My officers, Jenkins and Morales, stood ready, their radios crackling. Tyler shuffled behind his mother, his earlier swagger replaced by a nervous twitch. My grocery bag sat at my feet, a silent witness to the chaos Karen had sparked. You can't do this. Karen snapped, her voice shrill. I know my rights. You're abusing your power, Mark. Abusing my power, I said, my tone even but laced with steel. You called the cops on me. Karen, I'm just doing my job listening to both sides. The crowd parted as Old Man Harris, a grizzled farmer who'd lived in Willow Creek longer than most, stepped forward. Karen's been pulling stunts like this for years, he said, his voice gravelly. Tried to fine me for my tractors, noise pollution. Said it lowered property values. Murmurs of agreement rose. Others chimed in stories of Karen's HOA bullying, from petty fines to outright threats. The air grew heavier, the town's grievances spilling out like water from a cracked dam. Karen spun on Harris. You're lying. All of you are against me. But her words lacked conviction. Tyler tugged at her arm, whispering, Mom, let's go. She shook him off, her eyes wild. I raised a hand, silencing the crowd. Karen, this isn't about me anymore. It's about everyone you've pushed around. You and Tyler tried to take my groceries, then lied about it. That's theft and slander. You want to talk rights? Let's talk consequences. Her face twisted. You're nothing but a small-town cop with a big ego, she shouted. I'll have your badge. The crowd gasped. Jenkins stepped closer, his hand on his belt. Ma'am, you need to calm down, or we'll have to take this to the station. Karen's eyes darted to the crowd, searching for allies. She found none. Even her usual supporters, like Mrs. Tate from the HOA board, looked away. The truth had cracked her armor. And now the town was seeing her for what she was, a bully who'd overplayed her hand. I leaned in, my voice low, so only she could hear. You don't know me, Karen. But you're about to learn what happens when you push too far. Her lips trembled, but she held her ground, defiant to the last. The crowd watched, breathless, as the confrontation teetered on the edge of explosion. The tension outside Miller's general store snapped like a brittle twig. Karen, cornered by the crowd's growing anger and my officer's presence, lunged forward, jabbing a finger at my chest. You think you're untouchable, Mark. I'll sue you. I'll ruin you. Her voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. Tyler grabbed her arm, his face pale, but she yanked free, her rage a wildfire. Enough, I barked, loud enough to make the crowd flinch. Karen, you're not suing anyone. You're answering for what you and Tyler did. And for everything else. I turned to Jenkins. Take their statements. Now. Karen froze, her bravado crumbling. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, stories of her HOA tyranny spilling out. Mrs. Carter spoke up again. She threatened to foreclose on the Wilsons' farm because their barn was unsightly. They almost lost everything. Others nodded, their voices rising tales of harassment, manipulation, and greed. Karen wasn't just a nuisance. She was a predator, using her HOA power to control Willow Creek. Tyler, now visibly shaken, muttered, I didn't mean it. Okay. Mom said it was fine. His confession hung in the air, a crack in Karen's facade. She spun on him, hissing, Shut up, Tyler. But it was too late. The crowd had heard, and their anger turned to disgust. Morales stepped forward, notepad in hand. Ma'am, we need you to come with us. You too, Tyler. Karen's eyes widened, her hands trembling. She looked to the crowd, but no one met her gaze. Her reign was unraveling, thread by thread. I picked up my grocery bag, the weight grounding me. This isn't about me, Karen, I said. It's about this town. You've hurt people for too long. Her lips quivered, but no words came. The crowd watched as Jenkins and Morales led her and Tyler to the patrol car. Some cheered. Others stood silent, processing the fall of Willow Creek's self-appointed queen. The truth had torn her down, but the fight wasn't over. I knew Karen'd claw her way back if she could. As the patrol cars pulled away, I turned to the crowd. This town deserves better, I said. We're not done yet. The patrol cars vanished down the dusty road, leaving Willow Creek in a stunned silence. My groceries sat heavy in my arms, a reminder of how this had all started. The crowd dispersed slowly, their whispers carrying a mix of relief and unease. Karen's fall was a victory, but it left a void. I'd exposed her, but the town's wounds ran deep, and I knew my role as chief couldn't stay hidden anymore. Back at the station, Karen sat in a holding room, her defiance replaced by a cold, calculating stare. Tyler, in a separate room, was spilling everything how his mother had told him to teach me a lesson by taking my groceries, how she'd used him to intimidate others. His words painted a picture of a woman obsessed with control, using her HOA position to manipulate and extort. Jenkins handed me a stack of complaints from neighbors, some dating back years. Fines, threats, even rumors of land deals tied to Karen's developer friends. She hadn't just bullied. She'd schemed to reshape Willow Creek for profit. I sat across from her, the metal table between us cold as her expression. Karen, this isn't just about today, I said. We're looking into everything, your fines, your threats, your deals. It's over. Her eyes narrowed. You can't prove anything, she hissed. But her voice shook, and I saw the fear beneath her bravado. She knew the truth was closing in. Outside, the town was buzzing, News of Karen's arrest spread like wildfire, and people started coming forward. The Wilsons shared how Karen had pressured them to sell their farm at a loss. Old Man Harris revealed emails where she'd threatened to report his livestock as a health hazard. Each story was a piece of the puzzle, exposing her web of control. But it wasn't just Karen. Her HOA board, including Mrs. Tate, had enabled her, turning a blind eye for their own gain. I called a town meeting that evening at the community hall, a weathered barn converted for gatherings. The place was packed, standing room only. I stood at the front, no longer just Mark, the quiet neighbor, but Chief Reynolds, badge in hand. Willow Creek is ours, I said, my voice carrying over the crowd. Not Karen's. Not the HOA's. We decide what this town becomes. The room erupted in cheers. But I knew this was only the beginning. Karen's collapse was a start. But rebuilding trust would take more than one day. The days after Karen's arrest were a whirlwind. Willow Creek felt like a town waking from a long sleep, its people buzzing with a mix of anger and hope. My officers dug deeper, uncovering records of Karen's HOA fines, most of which were illegal or inflated. We found emails linking her to a shady developer planning to turn local farms into vacation homes. Each revelation was a blow to her legacy, but also a reminder of how much she'd hurt this community. I spent hours at the station, sifting through complaints and taking statements. Neighbors I'd only waved to before now poured out their stories. The Wilsons, a family of 5, told me how Karen's threats had nearly cost them their home. She said our barn violated codes. Mr. Wilson said, his voice thick with emotion. We couldn't pay the fines. She offered to buy our land for pennies. His wife clutched his hand, tears in her eyes. Their story wasn't unique. Karen had preyed on the vulnerable, using her HOA power to bend Willow Creek to her will. Tyler's confession was the final nail. He admitted Karen had coached him to intimidate people, including me, to keep them in line. He was scared, a kid caught in his mother's web. I didn't hate him. I pitied him. He'd face consequences, but I made sure he got a chance to make things right. Community service, not jail. Karen, though, was another story. Charges were piling up: theft, slander, extortion. Her HOA empire was crumbling, and she had no one left to fight for her. The town meeting had lit a spark. People started organizing, talking about dissolving the HOA entirely. Mrs. Carter, the baker, started a petition to replace it with a community council, one that served everyone, not just the powerful. I backed it, using my position to ensure transparency. But I wasn't naive. Change wouldn't come easy. Karen's allies, like Mrs. Tate, were still lurking, and some folks feared rocking the boat. One night, as I walked home under a sky thick with stars, I felt the weight of it all. I'd taken down a bully, but Willow Creek needed more than justice. It needed healing. I stopped by my porch, where my grocery bag from that day still sat, unopened. A reminder of how one small act standing my ground had changed everything. Willow Creek was changing, but not without growing pains. Karen's arrest had peeled back layers of resentment, and the town was grappling with what came next. The community hall became a hub of debate, with neighbors arguing over the HOA's future. Some wanted reform, others wanted it gone. I stayed neutral, letting the town decide. But as chief, I made sure no one silenced the quieter voices: the farmers, the single moms, the folks Karen had trampled. Karen's trial was set for next month, and the evidence was airtight. My recording, Tyler's confession, and the stack of complaints painted a clear picture. She'd lawyered up, but her developer friends were distancing themselves, unwilling to go down with her. Mrs. Tate and the HOA board resigned under pressure, their own complicity exposed. The town was free, but freedom brought questions. Who would lead? How would we rebuild? I started hosting open forums at the hall, letting people air their grievances and ideas. Old Man Harris suggested a co-op to protect local farms. Mrs. Carter pushed for community events to bring people together. Even Tyler showed up, head down, offering to help with cleanup projects. I saw potential in him, a kid who'd made mistakes but wanted redemption. I gave him a chance, pairing him with volunteers to fix up the Wilson's barn. One evening, as I locked up the station, Mrs. Wilson stopped me. "Mark," she said, her voice soft, "you gave us our home back. We won't forget that." She handed me a pie, warm from her oven. I smiled, my throat tight. This was why I'd come to Willow Creek, not for power, but for moments like this. But not everyone was ready to move on. Some of Karen's old allies whispered about outsiders, like me, stirring trouble. I ignored them, focusing on the town's future. The petition to dissolve the HOA gained traction, and plans for a community council took shape. Willow Creek was finding its voice, and I was proud to be part of it. As I ate that pie on my porch, I thought about the groceries that started it all. A simple act of defiance had sparked a revolution. But revolutions don't end with one fight rebuilt. Day by day, by people choosing to do what's right. A month later, Willow Creek felt like a new town. The HOA was officially dissolved, replaced by a community council led by Mrs. Carter and Old Man Harris. They weren't perfect, but they listened, something Karen never did. The council organized barn raisings, potlucks, and a fund to help families like the Wilsons stay on their land. Tyler, now a regular at community projects, was finding his place, his smirk replaced by a quiet determination to make amends. Karen's trial came and went. She was convicted on multiple charges, sentenced to community service and restitution. She moved away. Her house sold to a young family who painted it bright blue just to spite her old rules. The town didn't celebrate her fall. Instead, they focused on building something better. The developer deals collapsed, and the farms were safe. For now. I stood at the community hall during the first council meeting, watching neighbors laugh and plan. My role as chief was out in the open, but I was still Mark Flannel. Pickup and all. I didn't need to be a hero. I just needed to be here, part of this town that had fought for itself. One evening, I walked to Miller's General Store, the same place where it all began. The wooden signpost still stood, its bold yellow text, "Truth will outfaded but clear." I smiled, thinking of that day, my grocery bag, and Karen's call to the cops. It was a small act, standing my ground, but it had rippled through Willow Creek, waking a town that had forgotten its own strength. I bought a root beer, cracked it open, and sat on the store's steps. The stars were bright, the air clean. This was home, not just a place, but a community that chose truth over fear, unity over control. I'd come to Willow Creek for peace, but I'd found something better, purpose. And as the town rebuilt, I knew we'd face more fights, more Karens, but we'd face them together, and that was enough.